Now it is my pleasure to welcome to the stage Alon, Shakevsky, and for the QA session, Eyal, Ronen.
Can you do cryptography in the dark? Is the trusted hardware that we use every day really trustworthy? Today, we'll share the journey of our research, including the highs and the lows, and we'll see what exactly Samsung failed to do, but moreover, we'll take a look at how the industry should change. When you start the research, you never know what you're going to get. And sometimes you ask, what are the odds that we find something meaningful? On the one hand, we have the leading Android vendor, Samsung, with federal security certifications and a lot of resources. On the other hand, we have one part-time graduate student in a Zoom meeting with two amazing advisors. If university researchers could find something meaningful, then well-funded organizations can do much more. And if Samsung's fail here, then other vendors with less security resources could do much worse. We found two high-severity CVEs that affect a massive scale of over 100 million devices and allow to fully recover the cryptographic keys that were encrypted by trusted hardware. To help you understand our research, we'll start with why you should care, what we found, and what are the main lessons. This is your phone. You use it every day for a variety of security-critical tasks. You store sensitive information, you pay with a service such as Google Pay, and you use it to manage most of your digital lives. This makes it a major target for attackers. And in recent years, we saw many public attacks that completely compromised the operating systems. For example, see today's Black Hat talk by the Google malware security team. But we still need to protect the cryptographic keys of applications so that attackers will not be able to transfer money from your bank account or log into your PayPal or Twitter accounts. For this reason, modern Android devices use the TrustZone security extension to provide a trusted execution environment, or TEE, that runs a separate, isolated TrustZone operating system. There are many different TrustZone operating systems and trusted applications. In fact, Samsung devices use three different operating systems: QSEE by Qualcomm, KiniBee by Trustonic, and Tigris by Samsung themselves. These vendors keep their black box designs secret, making it harder to verify its security. In this research, we chose Samsung as a test case. We reverse engineered the cryptographic design of the Keymaster, and were interested in the security of hardware-protected cryptographic keys and their relationship with higher-level protocols with a remote trusted party. As we can see, TrustZone provides a logical separation into two worlds: the normal world, which runs Android, and the secure world, which runs the trusted OS. We follow the Android platform security model, which states that the hardware protection of keys should withstand a completely compromised normal world. But in fact, for our attacks, we only require sufficiently strong context in the Android user mode to communicate with TrustZone drivers. Finally, we have the Android Keystore, designed by Google, which provides cryptographic key management. Applications can request key generation, and the Keymaster trusted application in the TrustZone will generate the key in secure hardware, and before returning it to the normal world, it will encrypt it with a hardware-derived key. The keys can be stored on disk or used for key attestation to prove that the key was really generated in secure hardware. They can also be used for cryptographic operations, such as sign or encrypt. The important point is that the plaintext key material should only be accessible by the Keymaster and should never leave the TrustZone. Never. Okay, so a quick wrap-up. The Keymaster protects the key material, and it should be the only entity with plaintext key access. But is this assumption guaranteed? After this brief introduction, let's dive into our security analysis. And before we begin, note that most details are simplified. And for more information, please see the extended paper. How do you even begin? Where do you start? You can download the firmware and extract trusted applications, bootloaders, and the kernel of the trusted OS. You can read the little available public documentation and use security certifications and the open source archive. But for most of our research, we spent a lot of time reverse engineering with Ghidra for dozens of firmwares and trusted operating systems. And how do you even interact with the Keymaster? Usually, applications use a binder API to communicate with the Keystore service, which uses the Keymaster API to communicate with TrustZone drivers that execute a SMC, or secure monitor call, to switch execution to the secure monitor. The secure monitor forwards the request to the trusted OS, for example, Tigris, and eventually to the Keymaster. We published an open source tool called Keybuster that allows to directly communicate with the Keymaster without any input filtering or validation by the Keymaster API. We used it to reproduce our proof of concept attacks. Now, as you recall, the Keymaster protects the key material by encrypting it. And after extensive reverse engineering, we saw that Samsung chose to use AES-GCM with an encryption key that is derived from a hardware key, the REK, using a key derivation function. This is a very fragile construction, which is not misuse resistant, and is extremely vulnerable to IV reuse. Two interesting questions are, how are the encryption keys derived, and how is the IV chosen? We saw that the salt parameter that is used in the key derivation is the SHA-2 digest of the following values with some variation. In the first variation, the salt is a constant string followed by attacker control application ID and application data. In the second variation on Galaxy S9, they also bind the bootloader state, which is constant for our discussion. And only in the last variation on Galaxy S10 and newer devices did Samsung add 16 bytes of randomness that changed the derived key every time. Side note, a possible explanation as to why Samsung has 3 different variations is the mobile federal protection profile, which requires bootloader state binding, for example. So we saw that the client can control the salt, which means we can have key reuse. To our surprise, we found that the client can also set the encryption IV. So we also have IV reuse. Now, AES-GCM is a stream cipher that uses counter mode internally to encrypt the IV and XOR it with the plaintext. This leads to the following IV reuse attack. Given a key blob A that we wish to recover, we can extract the IV, and using the same IV and salt, we can import a known key B with the Keystore API, and we get an encrypted blob B. Now, we simply XOR the ciphertext of A with the ciphertext of B to get the XOR of the plaintext, and then we XOR with the known plaintext of B. And we fully recover the key material of A, which is pretty exciting. A trivial observation is that once we recover the key material, we can bypass any key restriction, such as protected confirmation or biometric prompt. And we can simply transfer this amount to that account without the trusted UI taking over and without user consent. But this only works on Galaxy S9 and similar devices, and not on the latest S10 and newer devices, because the salt changes, the derived key changes every time. To our surprise, we also found that the client is allowed to set the encryption version using a hidden API. Therefore, an attacker could downgrade all new key blobs to a vulnerable encryption version, and then use the Ivy reuse attack we just saw to fully recover any key blob. Can this affect higher level protocols with a remote trusted party? Take, for instance, the FIDO web authentication standard, which uses public key cryptography to authenticate to websites instead of passwords. Web authentication uses an internal security element called the platform authenticator to generate and use authentication keys. Usually, this is an external security key, such as YubiKey. But we already have secure hardware in our pockets, so we can just use the Android TrustZone-based Keymaster. The important point is that an attacker should not be able to recover the authentication keys and should not be able to clone the platform authenticator, so that your Netflix or VPN subscription will not be used on a different device. Web authentication has two main stages. When the user wants to register, the device generates a key pair using the Keymaster trusted application in the TrustZone, and uses key attestation to prove that the key was really generated in secure hardware. If the certificate is valid, the server registers the user with the public key. Then, when the user wants to log in, the server sends a unique challenge, and after getting user consent, the device signs the challenge with the private key in the secure hardware. If the signature is valid, the user is signed in. Using GAR attacks, we can downgrade any key blob, recover it with the Ivy reuse attack, and then we can clone the platform authenticator, since we can sign any server challenge with the private key. In our demo on Galaxy S10, we used GDB to implement the downgrade attack, and then Keybuster to implement the Ivy reuse attack. And we used the FIDO, the strong key FIDO server and sample application without any modifications. After registration, we recovered the private key and verify it against the attestation certificate. And to complete our demo, we used a different application that doesn't use TrustZone at all and simply uses the recovered key. We managed to successfully authenticate against StrongKey's remote server over the internet. Overall, we saw that attackers could recover cryptographic keys and use them to steal your money or to steal your identity. We reported our findings to Samsung in May last year. The disclosure for the Ivy reuse attack was pretty straightforward. In August, they patched Galaxy S9 and similar devices, assigned the high severity CVE, and removed the option to set the Ivy from the API, which is great. But life is not so simple. And in June, Samsung rejected the downgrade attack, saying that it's impossible to create downgraded key blobs. We discovered the same attack on Galaxy S20 and S21 and reported the downgrade attack as a separate issue. But then Samsung said that they think there's no practical security impact. This made us kind of sad. And we almost gave up. But in a final attempt, we sent our paper with which made us feel great. They assigned the high severity CVE, patched all relevant devices, and completely removed the legacy key blob implementation. Maybe the moral of the story is to never give up. It's important to note that most of our research involved very time-intensive reverse engineering. And 2 weeks after our research was published, the Lapsus hacker group leaked the entire Samsung source code. We'd like to think that if this code was open source, then those issues would have been found years ago, hopefully before reaching production devices. And if not, it would still make our research much easier and much faster to complete. Also, we saw similar IV reuse attacks against real-world systems over 10 years ago. Maybe it's true that people just don't understand IVs. Finally, let's see what can we learn from this. The root cause of both issues is API misuse. The client should not be able to set the encryption IV or the encryption version. Also, the Keymaster, as a security critical application, should have minimal attack surface and should not include any hidden code. Instead, the IVs in GCM should be unique, and you can use a misuse-resistant authenticated encryption, such as AES-GCM SAV, or use a misuse-resistant cryptographic library, such as Tink. You should also always use the latest encryption version, if possible. The bigger issue is in the composability with higher-level protocols. In protocols like web authentication, a remote trusted party uses key attestation to prove that the authentication keys were really generated in secure hardware. But, as we just saw for Samsung devices, the secure hardware can be flawed, and cryptographic keys can be extracted. But the FIDO server has no way of knowing that, and no way to it can't set a policy to reject certificates from such devices, because the attestation certificate does not contain any information about the encryption method. In fact, as long as we have vendor-specific black box designs in the ecosystem, it's impossible to prove the correctness of the composition. We hope that our work will motivate the use of an open standard design by Google for the Keymaster subsystem. Side note, about a month after our research was published, Google announced changes to their key attestation protocol, making it possible to not provision certificates to known compromised devices. This could be a step in the right direction. In conclusion, we saw the dangerous pitfalls that arise when the cryptographic design is kept secret. We advocate the use of an open standard design that would prevent such issues. And as we just saw, we think that there is no security by obscurity. The cryptographic design should be reviewed by independent researchers and should not rely on the difficulty of reverse engineering proprietary systems. Finally, the design choice of the fragile AES-GCM for authenticated key blob encryption deserves discussion after too many years of IV reuse in real-world systems. I want you to leave today with two things in mind. Do cryptography in the open and make sure it's misuse resistant. Otherwise, you just might get catastrophic failure. Thank you for your time. Feel free to ask me any questions and join Eyal for also more questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that fantastic presentation. We're going to jump into the question and answers here. At the moment, we don't have any questions in our virtual chat, but please feel free to throw some in there. If our audience has any questions, feel free to please stand up, and we will bring you a microphone to ask your questions to the presenters. We see you over there, and we're going to get you a mic here.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, what was the procedure like? Can you talk about in details about how you reverse engineered to find this flaw in the Keymaster? You mentioned a little bit of like you extract something from the public firmware that you found, but can you shed more light on it?
Again, do you want me to explain how do you start the research and how do you explore the Keymaster? Is that the question?
Just high-level detail of like what kind of analysis that required to find this flaw.
It's a lot of manual reverse engineering and a lot of like dirty work. Yeah.
That's what I was looking for. Manual.
Yeah. No easy tricks.
Great, thank you so much. Do we have any other questions from the audience? I am not seeing any, so, oh, we do have a gentleman over in the corner there.
Hello, thanks for the great presentation. Why you think that the IV was unlocked to be set by the AI, maybe for debugging purposes?
We don't have a clear answer, but maybe it's possible that they wanted the deterministic tests, and they wanted like to be able to encrypt and get the same ciphertext, so they used the same IV, but that's not the right way to go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it looks like we have one more question here.
Hello. Excellent presentation. Question on open sourcing cryptographic libraries, functions, new ways of doing things. Do you see this as more of like an academic exercise similar to what NIST does when you have new cryptographic proposals or types or solutions? Or are you thinking more like what we would do for open source software in general, where it's open to the world?
Eyal, do you want to take that? Or,
Yeah, I think that we want to have both. If there's a new protocol that has been suggested, like Google is suggesting now for provisioning keys for attestation, we think this is something that should be described to the public and should be open to comments and incorporate other people from the security community, either from academia or industry, during the process, which it's like NIST is doing, but not necessarily need to be by a government entity. After this is done, any cryptographic implementation, I think, should be open sourced as much as possible, so everybody can look at the code and see that the actual implementation is also secure. So we want to have both options, basically.
So there was a bit of an echo, so just like to follow his point, there should be like a collaboration between academia and industry, like in the standardization of TLS. And any cryptographer, if they saw the code, they would immediately tell you that there's an issue. And yeah, you should make cryptographic code as open source as possible, because the security should lie in the design and not in it being hidden. Like the obscurity does not help in this case. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? We see you over there, sir, and we're getting you the microphone.
like to also compliment you on your great presentation. At the beginning, you said that this was a fully certified design, had certs from FIPS and I think also Europeans. So what is your message to the certification authorities about how they go about certifying designs like this based on your experience?
I think the message is to involve also independent researchers, or at least to make sure, like, maybe those issues, like the fragmentation of the different variations, work us because of the, it's not FIPS, but it's the MDFPP, the Federal Protection Profile. And maybe, like, in trying to support that, they made some issues. But it's important to note that there were professional security labs that did, I guess they had source code access, and they did, like, very detailed security analysis. And they also published some security certificates. But it was still not enough to find a very trivial issue. So maybe they need to reconsider and think what's next. Yeah.
If I can add to this, then we have multiple examples. If you take OpenSSL code, which have versions that are FIPS certified, they're still finding bugs and vulnerabilities in this code time and time again. But this is because OpenSSL is open source, and any researcher and any person can download the code and have a look at it. So I feel that trying to have a baseline of requirements for certification might be a good idea, but this is not enough to make sure that software is secure. And we need a lot of eyes looking at this type of code. And again, I feel that this is certification. This might be good, but it's not a substitute to the whole research community trying to look at solutions.
Okay, I just have a quick question. So, like, it makes a lot of sense for big projects that have impact of millions and millions of users to have it open sourced and research. What about smaller projects? I just looked up the AES-GCM website, and it doesn't say anything about a Wikipedia page. It doesn't say anything about IV replay attacks and the weaknesses of IV. So what resources would you recommend for people who just are not going to have researchers looking at their code, because our project might be seen by 100 business side type people, and we still need to make sure our stuff is cryptographically secure? What sort of resources would you recommend?
I would recommend to use something like misuse-resistant cryptography libraries, like Think by Google, or other libraries that really help you, like, even if you don't have the necessary cryptographic background, like, still make it work. And yeah, it's an important point, because cryptography engineering requires very gentle and precise operations. So yeah, you should always at least know what are you using, know the security assumptions, because in GCM, the security assumptions is that the IVs are unique, and you should try to avoid misuse. Yeah.
Great, thank you. That is time for us, and I want to thank the presenters here. Got some wonderful information from this, and if there are additional questions, please feel free to speak to Alon in the hallways. Thank you for coming to Black Hat, and thank you to our presenters.
Thank you.